I check out Lenny's newsletter and Lenny's podcast all the time. And there was a conversation recently with Max Schoening, who is the head of product at Notion, which is a product that a lot of us use. And he had an interview with Lenny, and one of the things that he was talking about was, and honestly, it felt like it was written for this very moment, and it kind of was, but in our current day and age, with AI proliferating the way that it is, the people that are actually pulling ahead aren't necessarily the ones with the deepest AI skills or the deepest skill sets in general. They're the ones who actually just move and get stuff done. And so the notion of agency came into it really heavily. And Max's statement was that agency beats your credentials. And we're gonna dig into that and why that matters for the work that we do, the things that we ship, and how to leverage that thought in your career and what you should actually be focusing on. And to help me out with that today, got a couple of great folks here. They are the co-hosts of the Product Camp Conversations podcast, and you'll recognize both of them as being members of our community as well. But first up, let's meet our first cut panelist. He mentors start judges AI card games by the wooden boxes, and he calls that product research. Welcome to Beyond the Data's Dave Matthias. Hey, Dave.
Thank you. Well, and I know from that comment that you have been listening too. So
A little bit,
it.
maybe. And most librarians archive the past. She creates the roadmap. Product Coffee's own keeper of the catalog, senior product manager, Allison Herbert. Welcome, Allison.
Good morning. Welcome.
Glad to
Great to
have
be
you
here.
here. So let's get into this podcast, Lenny's podcast, an interview with Max, and just the concept of whether it's knowing the tools and having the skills, or the notion of agency and how you apply that in your own work. And I'll run over to you, Allison, and start with you. What struck you about the question that I threw out here about whether agency really is the only skill worth having?
I think there is something about agency that does differentiate folks, especially in today's world where we've got a lot of things dividing our attention, perhaps even in your organization, trying to make sense of where should we go first or next, or what's the right way to go. To me, when it comes to agency, I think about where do I have the opportunity to drive a conversation in a direction that's going to get us farther and faster. And so sometimes that's inside the organization, sometimes it's outside the organization, sometimes it's with conversations you don't expect. I had a great conversation yesterday afternoon that I was not expecting to have. And so it's given me some opportunity to think about something from a different perspective. And so if I had just stayed focused on a single ask or a single thing that's on my desk, I might not have had that conversation. And I think that's lent itself to a whole bunch of doors being opened or possibilities being opened. And so I think that's the value agency carries, especially with as many things that are available to us today that weren't available, I don't know, 2 weeks ago or 6 months ago or 2 years ago.
Right.
You just need to stay curious. And so I think agency is a lovely partner to that.
And it occurred to me, maybe before I even asked you that question, we should have talked about this, because agency is one of those words that has meaning, has specific meaning, and people often don't take the time to explicitly say what they mean by it. It's another one. It's like taste. We hear a lot about taste these days, and that actually came up in the podcast. But
In the article, yeah.
So when you're talking about agency, what does that mean to you?
This is way early for going into the glossary. Thanks, Jason.
You agreed to it.
I did agree to it. I said yes. I think agency means being able to have, I don't want to say control, but I think a through line to your path.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else telling me what to do or when to do it or where to do it by isn't agency. Me having permission to be curious and explore and find my own path through is agency. So, right, you can say, go solve this problem. Cool. That is control. But if you say, you figure it out and come back to me when you have questions, that's agency. And so I think there's some real value in product teams when we open up the possibility rather than saying, please go solve problem, it's on page 42 and make sure you do this. Like, again, very generic example, but there's nothing inspiring there. So sure, I'm just gonna, right? I think about dev tickets at that point. Hey, you wrote a ticket, I delivered the
Yeah,
ticket. Like, no, gross. We don't want
right.
that. We want you to be thinking about the problem in a meaningful way and saying, is that the right way to get us where we need to go?
Yeah.
Does that align to our bigger picture? Yes, sometimes it is just ship the ticket, but the body of work should be really reflective of agency and the ability to think differently about how we're solving the problem.
I think proactively. Dave,
Yeah.
how about you? Let's I'll do you the courtesy I didn't do to Allison and let you anchor the concept of agency first before we kind of dig into how it applies.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I'm a little torn on this a little bit, right? Because when I think of agency and I think of it from almost the behavioral science lens is always how I
Mm.
sort of think of it. And when you look at people that believe that they have agency versus that they don't feel like they have agency, it's actually one of the biggest determinations of like, will these people be successful? Like, do you believe you have agency and that you act accordingly and you're gonna just things will compound on itself, right? In this case, so when I think of a lot of things that in product that we always say like we have a lot of influence, but how much control do we really have? We have a lot less control. We're trying to have control as much as we can with good communication, good relationships, good all those things that we try to really strive on and focus on skills wise to, I always say like two of the biggest skills that I try to hire for are always empathy and curiosity, like people that are in the 99 percentile in both of those, because oftentimes the other skills that come with that are folks that generally would have that agency. But I think when it comes to, because I think a lot of things like the article or the episode was getting a lot into and the attention spent there, I look at it as a lot of that time that is being spent on that AI side right now, hopefully is allowing you to better invest your time. Like, what are you using with that a time that you free up? And I think so I don't think it's like you're like trading off one thing for the other. I think you're actually like, how can I spend more time with customers? How can I spend more time thinking deeply on problems? How can I spend more time communicating with the right stakeholders and leveraging AI to sort of free up more of my time is really where I'm stressing for folks to think about like how they're like readjusting that time that they're doing as opposed to just doing more, like more busy stuff.
That makes that makes a lot of sense, and that's certainly where one of the places where has been a real equalizer to let us actively think about the things that we were actually hired to do instead of the paperwork and the outputs that we end up being graded on creating. And I want to tell everybody in our audience here real quickly as we can continue our discussion. The big difference between our first cup panelists and the rest of you who are here with us in Zoom is that our first cup panelists get a heads up about what we're going to talk about for the first cup by a few hours sometimes, and sometimes even less. So they have a few extra minutes to think about it, but at the same time, it's intended to kind of spark some conversation among all of us. So if you're here with us and you would like to weigh in and talk a little bit about your thoughts on this notion of agency and how that applies to the product management skill set, or if you're a founder, how that applies to the skill set necessary to deliver great products to market in the first place, we want you to jump in. Pop your hand up. I'll pull you up here. Would love you to introduce yourself to everybody else in the Zoom room and everybody else who might be watching us. We got a lot of people watching us on YouTube as well and watching the recording as well. So love you to jump in and be a part of it. So one of the things I noticed is one of the statements that Max pointed out was that essentially AI has become this great equalizer. If you wanted to do something, if you wanted to create something, you before the last 2 or 3 years, and really this year, it's got this last 6 to 9 months is where it's gotten even more pronounced. You needed to have a technical co-founder. You needed to have a designer present if your skill set was really kind of that customer discovery and that identifying the market opportunity. If you wanted to build something, you needed this huge skill set, this group of people around you that had these wide skills in order to do anything effective. Now, the tools that all of us have access to, they may not be free, but they're pretty darn close to it. A $20 a month Claude subscription takes you a long way. Now, with those tools at your fingertips, the first 10% of the work that you need to do is fundamentally free, that you would need to rely on other people that you had limited exposure to. So it allows you to move more quickly. And whether you're talking about in a pure market facing sense or you're talking about in a career sense, that ability is fundamentally transformative. And one of the things that we've talked about a lot here on Product Coffee with a lot of the folks that we talk with is this notion that, yeah, so a product manager's maybe only a slightly better designer than an engineer, but you really need a professional designer to do a lot of work, to do the right kind of work. And that doesn't change at all. But one of the examples that came up was this guy, Ian, who has stopped writing PRDs altogether. He's a product guy. He goes straight to Figma and starts prototyping in Figma instead of writing requirements documents that, remember, we know nobody really reads, or they skim, or they feed into AI now to digest and help them figure out what to do. He starts prototyping in Figma. That's not taking a designer's job away, but it is communicating in a way that moves faster than reading a requirements document, pulling together a bunch of people to talk about how we might design this thing, and instead saying, here's the thing we need to create. Here's kind of one way it could look, and creating motion faster. Where are you seeing that in your life, in your circle, in your network? Are you still seeing this prevalence of focusing on stay in your lane, keep to the skills that you've got? You have a place here. Stay in your place. What are you seeing, and how's that impacting the work that you're seeing done? And I may call on somebody in our audience that I know has a pretty large, pretty good sized team working with them as well, and get a take from outside the panel as well.
Yeah. While you were talking there, Jason, I would tell you 100% in terms of the places and spaces where there is a pathway for folks to be building at speed. In the last 2 weeks, I've sat with a team that's producing a prototype that we talked in a meeting, and within 2 days had a full working prototype
Mm-hmm.
to demo. Yes, there were PRDs involved. Yes, I may have created them, but right,
Sure.
that's an opportunity with a large working group to say, this is what we're doing. Does this make sense? And help support. I mean, the PRDs themselves helped the development team bring that prototype to life. Now we're running back and talking through like adjustments and UI updates and things of that nature. So that would have taken weeks of conversations and interviews,
Mm-hmm.
months and years ago. So you're absolutely right. The speed is there. If I look even closer, my own house, I share my house with a technical person, but not at all a product person, not at all an engineer. And he just built his first retro Atari video
Oh,
game
cool.
in Claude Code all by
Yeah.
himself. He's created a whole story. I was so proud of him. My little product heart was so happy. But right, that's not someone that would have access to tools like that. And he even said to me, he was like, I don't need to know how to code this, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't need to be a specific subject matter expert in this code any longer. I just need to have the idea. And I think that's 100% what you were sharing with the person that goes to Figma to prototype. Like, I have an idea, I can express that, I can have a conversation, I can formulate a plan, and then work from there to build something. And the power of that is really tremendous. And it's really reshaping how I think teams are working. I also think it's reshaping how people are thinking
Mm-hmm.
about solving problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look at this as that learning mindset and how to learn quickly, right? And so framing it in that way, because the challenge that happens and is there's going to be some natural tension too, because people were used to a process, that process is changing. I would argue that the way things are going, that I expect that product in most organizations is going to change dramatically in the sense of like what product teams look like. I think they're going to be a lot smaller and a lot more convergence of skills. And there's always been a question of like, just because someone fits a product designer title or a product manager title, it's not like all product managers are the same. It's not all product designers are the same. And good relationships, anyways, with those folks, just like with engineers or engineering managers, is like you understand what each person likes to do, what they're best at. Just because you have a title doesn't mean that this is exactly what I get to do and this is exactly what you get to do. You work with a team and together you're going towards that shared mission, right? And I think this is going to blur the lines even more in a positive way for our customers. And so the question is just how quickly are organizations adapting, and you see certain big organizations doing more experimentation in this area. I think a lot of bigger organizations are going to take some time to do that, because that inertia of how do we switch, but I think everyone's going to end up more down that path. And so, yeah, I'm
And
excited about the learning more quickly, because that's really what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
yeah. Dave, when you think about the team aspect of it, and I know you've had some experience in trying to, right, help
Mhm.
teams move faster, is there anything that comes to mind in terms of like what's the first thing that you want to observe your team doing to be able to move faster, right? It may be bumping into each other with all those, wait, I used to do that, and wait, how do we do this now? But is
Yeah.
there something that you've found to really help kind of get the team all on the same page with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you try to, so just like sort of that concept of a design sprint, I think there's a
Hmm.
something around, and we did this at a fairly scaled approach with the company not too long ago, where with involving both design and product in this realm and sort of show the art of the possible with different folks as we were bringing on a new AI tool, and basically saying, hey, like the world is your oyster, rethink everything. And because you're going to have a lot of great ideas, and not every team's going to adjust the same. So the more that I think you can empower good people, you're going to come up with you're naturally going to come up with some good solutions that then are going to exacerbate, sort of gain momentum, because there's the way of like, hey, from top down, this is how we do it, and that usually
Mhm.
doesn't work that well, especially
No.
in larger
It
organizations
creates a
where
lot of
that
fear too. I think
there's a
like
lot of
people
fear.
are
Yes.
nervous on edge just by the sheer volume of change right now, and then
Yep.
the top-down mandates kind of compress and compound that. So I love that
Yeah.
you're thinking about creating space for that and creating space of what does empowerment look like or what
Yeah.
does exploration look like. Yeah.
But also especially giving them the power to think differently, to not feel like you've got to do the same thing like you've always done. You've got to start in
Yeah.
Figma. Why do you need to start in Figma? Like, you don't need to,
Right.
right? So you want to learn
Hmm.
something. Why can't you just go into Claude, put that there? Maybe you have even some digital personas where it's like, well, do we need to first go to a customer? Is maybe a process that we want to have some digital personas to look at things, and we have some good customer personas, and they're going to do that. And now our next step is going in front of customers, and this is going to take 2 or 3 days tops from start to cycle and to get real learnings.
Let's get into it for today. So, first of all, just by show of virtual hands, I am curious, hitting the raise hand button there in your Zoom panel, how many of you have actually been to a product camp before? Or, yep, got some hands going up. So, a good percentage of you. There's quite a few people who look like they're new to the community as well and have not been here before. So, that's awesome too. So, you're in for a treat. So, I'm going to give a little bit of intro for those who are new to the concept. If you've never been to an unconference, Product Camp is an unconference, and these originated back in the early 2000s ish, but they're a different kind of conference in that they're not entirely pre-planned. They don't have a curated a series of talks that you go to or sessions that you go to. Generally, the Product Camp agenda is set on the day of Product Camp by the people who show up. And Product Camp Atlanta specifically, we're very strict about that. We have keynote speakers at Product Camp Atlanta, but they're voted on the morning of the event. And I see we've got at least one of our recent keynote speakers here on the call today as well. But we'll probably embarrass you a little bit later, John. The you show up on the day of the event. Everyone who has something that they feel is worthy of teaching or having a discussion about gets up and does a 30-second pitch at the beginning of the day, and then we all vote. And the ones that get the most votes are the sessions that we actually do. Those are the talks that we'll have. We'll have 3 tracks going simultaneously. So there's lots of choices. You get to meet a lot of people. It's an ultimate networking forum. And it's truly a lot of fun. High energy, organized chaos, sometimes very disorganized chaos. But there is a plan to it and an outcome. And the outcome is that you learn some things and meet some people that help you deliver better products to market and advance in your career. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But one of the Product Camp is free to attend. And it always has been here in Atlanta, and we intend to keep it that way. But we do ask for volunteers to help make it. We don't hire a staff. We have volunteers who help make that a reality. And that's why pretty much I think everybody is here today. So we're going to talk about what that looks like. And in keeping with our first cup topic, volunteering is a high agency opportunity. You've already taken the first step by joining us here for this conversation today. But for those of you who are watching online or who may see this in the next few days as a rebroadcast, one of the things that I would point out is we talk a lot about networking and building your network, both when you don't need it and especially even when you do need it, but building those professional relationships that you can lean on and create friendships from and gain professional insights from over the course of your career. One of the best ways that I have found in my life to build a powerful and effective network is to work with people. You know the people that you work with better than almost anybody else. But the reality is your day-to-day job limits who you're exposed to work with to a very small set of people. So getting out there and volunteering in the community on lots of different things is a way to work with people towards something that you care about and build those relationships that you'll carry through for years and years and years. And there are a lot of people in the Product Camp community that I know have formed lifelong friendships, as have I, and that's because of that shared experience of working together to do something really powerful. So I encourage everybody here to not only think about volunteering as just a pure, I've got some time and something to do and I like this event, so I want to help the event. Think about the relationships that you create and lean into those relationships as we're working together. So I want to start by, well, first of all, Dave, Allison, you've been around a lot of product camps as well. What are some of the things that you see people getting out of the experience, besides just the day of the event and the stuff that they learn in the event? What are some other things you see people getting out of the